Twitter has issued a 12-hour suspension to Austin Petersen, a Republican candidate in the U.S. state of Missouri's Senate race, for what it describes as abusive behavior. His suspension came after a writer for the left-leaning Share Blue website drew a link between Petersen's acceptance of Bitcoin for campaign financing and the alleged Russian hacking of a Democratic senator. Petersen then responded with a GIF featuring Joseph Stalin. The post was deemed to have violated Twitter's rules, but the image was actually from its own collection and can be found on the platform's database. Austin Petersen joins us live now to discuss what happened. Welcome to the program. Now, first of all, has your account been unblocked at this point?
Yes, it was a temporary ban of 12 hours, which doesn't sound like much until you consider the fact that we are now 6 days away from a very critical Senate primary race. And 12 hours is a long time when you only have 6 days to be able to get your message out to voters. Twitter is directly interfering with the election here in the state of Missouri at the behest of a Democratic super PAC that is working for my opponent, Claire McCaskill, here in Missouri. They are trying to tie me into a narrative that would see me as someone who is colluding with Russia in order to facilitate an attack on my Democratic opponent, which is a bald-faced, egregious lie. And frankly, I think that this just serves to continue the narrative that Twitter suppresses conservative and libertarian voices from being able to get their message out because they have a bias, and it's deeply disturbing and a threat to American democracy.
Now, Twitter said that you were engaged in targeted harassment. How would you respond to that? And was there anything else besides the image that could have triggered the suspension?
The politically correct police are out in full force at all times, as my good friend Ben Carson might say at one point. But the fact of the matter is that this was a simple response GIF that was a joke to someone. I was actually claiming that they were the Stalinists. And it is quite ironic because their whole tactic, they were attacking me. My response was a picture of Joseph Stalin, which was meant to be humorous, saying off to Gulag. And then, of course, they mass reported me. And at first, Twitter sent me email messages saying that I had not violated any terms of service and that I had not even committed a crime. I have those emails. But still, 2 days later, a ban was issued saying that I had threatened them. There was a credible threat of violence, as if I have access to a gulag here in the state of Missouri that could be a credible threat. It's absolutely ridiculous. And again, this just goes to show that these social media giants who have banned me before, Facebook banned me before twice during this election. Twitter has now done it once. And frankly, I think that this is a suppression of the speech of political candidates, and it is something that could be actionable because there was a representative in the state of Florida who had the same thing happen to him. He was shadow banned on Twitter, and he issued it as an FEC complaint, basically that this amounts to an illegal campaign contribution to my opponents. It's something that we're looking into.
Now, Twitter, of course, also hasn't removed the GIF since then, so presumably it doesn't consider it to be offensive. So do you think this really is direct interference and not some sort of mistake?
No, I do not see this as a mistake whatsoever, simply because I had received those messages from Twitter that I had not done anything wrong. 3 different emails were sent to me about this, saying that I had not done anything wrong. Mysteriously, 2 days later, the ban was issued. It almost seems as if something had gone on behind the scenes and that this was an attempt to suppress my speech during a critical election. I do believe that this is interference by the social media networks to influence the outcome. When I was banned from Facebook before, after we had done some digging, we actually found out that Facebook's chief operating officer, Sheryl Sandberg, had been contributing the maximum to my opponent, Claire McCaskill, in this election. So they were banning me, and they were funding my opponent. It's a very sincere threat and something that Americans must pay, and people overseas should pay close attention to.
Mr. Petersen, if you could stay on the line, we'll be back with you in just one moment.
Sure.
Mr. Petersen's ban comes as Twitter brings together a special research team to combat prejudice and promote what it defines as collective health and openness on its platform. But the plan seems to be causing upset, with the assembled team already being accused of a strong anti-Trump bias.
Something tells me we'll suddenly start seeing more Republicans in Congress, testing the waters and pushing back against Trump. You know, because they're brave, independent actors and all.
Why Donald Trump when he can Trump Donald? Trump's 2016 digital team and Cambridge Analytica helped the Russians figure out who to target in their fake news campaign on Facebook.
The team will work on algorithms that root out incivility and intolerance on Twitter and access the extent to which people engage with different viewpoints. We can talk again now to Austin Petersen. Now, of course, theoretically, it's a noble objective to try and clean up Twitter, but what do you make of how the site's going about achieving that?
Well, it strikes me as very interesting that a platform such as Twitter would allow things like hardcore pornography on their platform and yet somehow be offended by a photo of an old Soviet leader. To me, I think that this speaks to the new desperation of the left. They are committed to taking down Donald Trump, conservatives, the Republican Party, as well as libertarians. They do not care much for free speech. They seek to blot out speech that they disagree with, and they're willing to use the weapon of social networks. They have weaponized social networks with the extreme Russophobia that we are seeing from Democrats right now. It's very likely that many people who believed may have correctly believed that if Hillary Clinton had been president of the United States right now, we could very easily be at war with Russia. The hawkish militaristic behavior of the Democratic Party today shows that they are very content to silence speech that they disagree with and to use any tactics that they can to shut down debate because they've lost the policy argument and now they're litigating. This is why we see these investigations into President Trump. Many people complain about the president's attitude, but I believe he's been under investigation nearly the entire time that he has been president of the United States. I'd be a little grouchy too. But like I said, it seems as if the Democrats are seeing red. It reeks of McCarthyism, and it has no business in American politics today.
And what do you make of the team being created? Should it possibly be openly sourced from a wide pool of academics to ensure it's free of bias?
I mean, I'm not quite sure what Twitter plans to do, but what I've seen is that there apparently has been an organization chart that has shown the biases of the people who are there to confront biases. Of course, everyone has a bias. If you're a journalist and you decide what story to cover, you may cover that story faithfully, but you have a bias just by choosing which story to cover. Facebook did this. It experimented with stories that were curated, that were supposed to be top stories that were trending. And of course, that curation itself lent itself to a bias towards the left, and they silenced conservatives when conservative stories were trending on that platform. I would expect to see the exact same thing from Twitter, which does have a very noted open and liberal biases. But I don't trust the social networks any more than I trust the mainstream media. I seek out alternative news sources in order to determine what is right and what is wrong, and of course use your try and put your confirmation biases aside to try and determine what is factual and what is not.
Well, if, as you say, bias is unavoidable, what do you make of Twitter saying that they're working towards serving a healthy conversation? Is that even achievable with over 300 million users, all on their platform right now?
Frankly, I would say that the answer is no. I tend to believe that free speech, we don't have free speech in the United States in order to be able to discuss the weather. We have free speech in the United States so that we can discuss very controversial things. I don't mind if a social media network has a bias. I assume a bias. But what I prefer is transparency about that bias. For example, Ben Shapiro, a noted conservative pundit here in the United States, comes out frequently and states that he is open and honest about his biases so that people can understand where he's coming from. I frankly find that kind of transparency refreshing. I don't expect to see that kind of transparency from Twitter or Facebook or any of the other social media giants. But if they did want to be intellectually honest, that is the approach that they should take.